part 3 of our discussion, our series talking about breaking chains, breaking free from the chains that are holding you, the chains that are keeping you bound, the chains that are restricting you from where you want to go in life, the things that you want to accomplish in life, the person that you want to be, the person that you dream about, the person that you think about in your mind, that you aspire to be, how to break free from all of those things that are keeping you bound, and not just break free in kind of this metaphorical sense and kind of just, okay, well, I'm good now, and I'm all, but actually get free, get healed, get free from the things that are keeping you trapped, that are keeping you bound. And we've talked about a few different things. Our first week, we talked about how Jesus is a chain breaker. And if you don't understand that Jesus is the chain breaker, the rest of the teaching doesn't really make sense because we're not our own chain breakers. We can't get free on our own. That's one thing that we believe about Christianity, and that you have to understand is that as Christians, we don't believe that we have the power to just self-actualize, and that we can overcome all these things on our own, and that we can be our best and manifest things and speak it and all that type of stuff outside of God. I think that's where a lot of these people get things wrong, is there's a lot of principles that work, like the principles of speaking things into existence and different stuff like that. It works within the context of God, within the context of Jesus, within the context of biblical principles, but not if you're just speaking into existence yourself. All of these things that we try to do, we try to remove God from the equation. We try to make ourselves God. We try to make it seem like we can get all of the benefits, but without serving God, without obeying His commandments. And that's not my teaching for today. But so many times we try to get the benefits from God. We want to act like we can get everything that God will give us, but we want to act like God doesn't exist. We want to take God out of the equation. So I believe that's certainly true for what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about the chain of other people's opinions, the chain of other people's opinions. And I want to just share with you a little bit that has helped me, and as I was studying and as I was praying about this, I hope that it helps you. And I truly believe that there are so many people that are trapped in other people's opinions. There are so many people that are trapped in what other people think about them, who other people want them to be, what other people want them to accomplish. So many of us, our whole lives, if we're not careful, we can stay trapped in this box that people have put us in. Not that God has put us in, not that we even want to be in, but we can stay trapped in a box that was not created for us. You've probably heard it so many times before, but it's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, and all of us have been created uniquely. Yes, there are things that all of us need to do. All of us are commanded to serve God. There's certain things in the Bible that all of us have been called to do. There's general callings for every believer to go into all the world and preach the gospel, to make disciples, to baptize people. Yes, we've all been called to those things, but all of us are going to work those out in different ways. And that's what I think it's interesting. People are just like, well, we're all called, make disciples. We're all called to make disciples. Yes, but that means a million different things. You can make disciples as a doctor. You can make disciples as a stay-at-home parent. You can make disciples as a vocational minister. You can make disciples as a Twitch streamer. You can make disciples a lot of different ways. And oftentimes people are put into a box. And I just believe it's frustrating for a lot of people. And I think this is where you see a lot of people getting burnt out. I think you see a lot of people getting frustrated with their life, a lot of people getting burned out because they've been put in a box that they don't fit into. And maybe they're even trying to make it work, but it doesn't fit them. It doesn't work on them. You see this great illustration that has been used many times before with David and Saul's armor, where David was a sling guy. He used a sling. He had been using a sling for years and years, most likely. He had been successful with the sling. And then Saul said, hey, if you want to be successful, if you want to do this thing that you're supposed to do, if you want to defeat the giant, then you need to put on my armor. You need to fit in this box. You need to fit in the way that things have always been done. And that story is always interesting to me, because if Saul's armor would have protected him from Goliath, then why wasn't Saul wearing the armor and going out and fighting Goliath? So it doesn't really make sense when you kind of step back and think about it for a moment. So are there things in your life where you've even tried to accomplish things, but because of other people's opinions, because of other people's doubts, and really because of your own fear, your fear of disappointing people, your fear of getting out of the alignment of God, getting out of the will of God, you have become frustrated. You become boxed in to something that you were never supposed to be. So that's what I want to talk about today. That's what I want to encourage you with today. And again, we're talking about breaking chains of other people's opinions. I'm going to switch out this iPad stand really quickly. I thought I would like that one, but I don't want to look down that much as I'm teaching today. Hey, if you guys are hopping on YouTube, thank you so much for hopping on. Thank you for being here. Really, really appreciate it. If you could go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, I would very much appreciate it. All right, so let's dive into the teaching today. Just like we talked about just a few seconds ago, Saul and David, that's a great example of people being put into a box, people being made to act a certain way, or you need to minister a certain way, you need to do your business a certain way, you need to raise your family a certain way. Again, there are principles that are in the Bible that are universal for everyone. There are certain things that you're supposed to do. There's certain things that God has commanded us to do. But if we're honest, there are a lot of gray areas of how you're supposed to live your life. I don't mean gray areas when it comes to sin. I don't mean gray areas when it comes to sexuality or marriage or different things that God has spoken about. But there's nowhere in the Bible that says you should go to this university or this university, or you should get this career path or this career path, or you should accept a job offer at this place or that place. There's no principles in there unless one is obviously, whether you're going to go work for a company that's, one is obviously like, cheating people and scamming people and all those different things. Obviously, God's not going to want you to be a part of that. But a lot of what we do in life, there's not this just overt command of this is how you're supposed to do it. So what we do is we get opinions from people and we ask people we love and people that we look up to, and we're like, well, what do you think I should do? Where do you think I should go? And that's good, but sometimes if we're not careful, we can let those people's opinions begin to sway what we really feel like we should do, and even what we feel like God's told us to do. And this is one of kind of, I guess you could say, a danger. I know I've had this in my life before where I'm so, I truly want to follow God, and I know what I feel like God has told me to do, but because it may be different or because people may not understand it, people that I respect and look up to may not be okay with it, or they may not want me to do it. And because I'm scared of like disappointing God, I'm like, okay, well, I really look up to them. I really respect them. So I don't want to disappoint God. I don't want to do what God's, told me to do, not told me to do. So I won't do that. And I can end up missing God's will because of what other people have said about me. And I'm not going to go into that too much today. What I want to talk about today more is where there are things where you are obviously bound to fear. You have a fear of people's opinions. You have a fear of what people say about you, what people think about you. And I think deep down, most people have this fear. Deep down, most people are worried about what the people around them think about them. Maybe not what everybody thinks about them, but you're worried about what your loved ones think about you. You're worried about what your boss thinks about you, what your coworker thinks about you. And that's healthy to a certain extent. I think people that just don't care what anyone thinks, and they don't have no filter, and they don't care, what they say to people, and if they hurt people, I think that's dangerous. I don't think that's healthy. I think there's a certain level of health to caring what other people think and caring how other people feel, but it can quickly become fear, and it can quickly become toxic. Not healthy, but it can quickly become toxic because you start living your life for the opinions of people, and not the opinions of God. And most likely, if you're a believer, your last opinion is probably yourself. It's probably other people's opinion, God's opinion, and then you are way down here. So you have to start living your life in a way where I'm going to please God first and I'm going to please other people is last. That's the last on my list. And I want to use a scripture actually from Jesus's life, because a lot of people may not realize this if you haven't studied a lot of the Bible, but a lot of people did not agree with Jesus. They did not affirm Jesus. Of course, we know that he was crucified at the end of his ministry, and we know that that was the whole point of him coming here to earth, so it's not like it was a surprise to Jesus. I mean, he had been telling his disciples the whole time that he was going to be crucified, but I think people don't understand that Jesus was misunderstood. Like, you feel like you're misunderstood, Jesus was misunderstood. And he would tell people over and over and over why he came to earth. He would tell his disciples, I've come and I'm going to be going to a cross. I won't be with you very long. One of you are going to betray me. He would tell them over and over and over, and they still misunderstood him. So if people misunderstood Jesus, I'm pretty sure they're going to misunderstand you. I think Jesus was one of the greatest communicators, one of the greatest speakers to ever exist. Even if you're not a Christian, you have to admit he was a pretty great speaker, a pretty great leader to have people following him 2,000 years later. And even he was misunderstood. If someone that was the Son of God, that was fully God and fully man, was misunderstood, I'm pretty sure we're going to be misunderstood. I'm pretty sure you're going to be misunderstood. Matthew 13, verse 53, this is talking about rejection, that Jesus was rejected. Jesus was misunderstood. Verse 53 says, when Jesus had finished telling these stories and illustrations, or another translation says his parables, he left that part of the country and he returned to Nazareth, his hometown. Got to pay attention to that. He returned to Nazareth, his hometown. When he taught there in the synagogue, everyone was amazed and said, where does he get this wisdom and the power to do miracles? So they're amazed. They say that he's wise, and they understand that he has the power to do miracles. Then they scoffed. So they were amazed at him, and then they scoffed. He's just the carpenter's son, and we know Mary, his mother, and his brothers, James and Joseph, Simon and Judas, all his sisters live right here among us. Where did he learn all these things? And they were deeply offended and refused to believe in him. They were deeply offended and they refused to believe in him. Okay, I want you to just think about that for a moment. Jesus, the person that we worship, that we looked up to, the person that died on a cross for our sins, he was rejected in his own town, even though people saw that he was wise, even though people saw that he could do miracles. Sometimes I think that if I show myself to people and if I prove myself to people, if I prove how smart I am, if I prove how gifted I am, if I prove that I can keep up with the conversation, if I can prove all these things, then people are going to approve of me. But that's not how it works. They saw that Jesus could do all these great things. They saw that he was a great teacher. They saw that he was doing miracles. But then they scoffed at him and they were offended at him. And then the last part of this passage, Jesus tells them a prophet is honored everywhere except in his hometown and among his own family. And so he did only a few miracles because of their unbelief. And I hit on this talking about faith a few days ago, last week in the broadcast. I'm not going to be talking about the faith part as much, but I want you to focus on this part where Jesus was limited in what he could do because of people's unbelief and because of their rejection of him. And I don't think it's that Jesus was limited because I know that God is sovereign, God can do, but if people do not want to receive God, if people do not want to receive Jesus, he's not going to force himself upon them. He's not going to force them to get saved. He's not going to force them to receive a miracle. So even Jesus was rejected. he was scoffed, he was laughed at, and they were offended by what he was saying, even though he was right. People were mad at him even though he was right, even though he was trying to help them. Can you think about that? Can you think of a time in your life when people have been offended at you, when people have been upset at you, even though you were right? Even though you were helping them, even though, like Jesus, he was doing miracles, he was teaching, you were doing your thing, whatever your gifting is, whatever God's called you to do, and still people scoffed at him, people laughed at him, and people were offended at him. I just think that's so important for us to realize that we are not alone in people misunderstanding us, that Jesus, even Jesus, was misunderstood. Even he was laughed at. Even he was rejected. So if you're watching this and you've been rejected by people, you've been laughed at, you've been misunderstood, people have tried to put you in a box, understand that you're not alone. Realize that you're not alone. This is a part of the human experience. It's just how life is. It's just how we do things. And so you are not alone, but I want to make sure you don't stay in that place. I want to make sure you don't stay trapped in that place, because what if Jesus had gone back to his hometown, and what if he had let his humanity take over, his human side take over, and be like, well, I mean, these people have rejected me, and they're supposed, they know I can do miracles, they know I can teach the Torah, they know I can do all these different things, and they rejected me. How am I going to be able to reach anybody else? How am I going to be able to do any other miracles? If I can't do miracles here, how am I going to be able to do miracles anywhere else? So many people get trapped in that moment, and they stay in that instead of realizing, hey, maybe this is just a group of people. Maybe this is just a one-off circumstance. Instead, they'll give up their entire future because of what one group of people said about them, what one family member said about them, what one boss said about them. Don't give up your future. Don't give up your destiny because of what one person said about you when they were offended, when they misunderstood you, when they didn't like what you did. Don't give up on your future because of that one person. Don't stay trapped in those chains. So let me give you a few thoughts from this, and I want to dive into a few practical things of how you can break free. And what I want to do is I want to kind of pair like a problem and a solution. So we're going to pull out a problem from this scripture passage, and then I want to give you the solution of what you can do in your life. And so we're going to be using this Matthew chapter 13 quite a bit, and then I'm going to pull in a few other scriptures. I want to encourage you to write these down, take some notes if you can. So the first thing is they didn't understand. The first problem that Jesus had in this situation is the family members, the Pharisees, the people that were listening to him, they didn't understand who he was or what he was called to do. They didn't understand who he was or what he was called to do. In their eyes, he was just Joseph's son. He was the carpenter's son. He was Mary's son. They had seen him grow up. They had seen him play out in the streets. They had seen him in school. They had seen him come in the store to buy things with his family. They'd seen him get in trouble before. Like all of these just normal experiences, Jesus went through all of those as he was growing up. It's not like he was just sitting in the temple, just in a shroud of light. No, he was fully man, fully human. He went through every temptation we go through, every trial we go through. So they didn't understand who he was. Honestly, I think a lot of them probably still believed that he was Joseph and Mary's son that was born outside of the marriage. Or maybe they didn't even think he was truly Joseph's son. Maybe they thought he was someone else's son, and Mary had gotten pregnant with someone else, and this was someone else's son that Joseph is raising. This was like a scandalous family. We always read the Christmas story, and then we just skip ahead to when Jesus is 12 or the wedding at Cana. But think about, for 30 years, we don't really hear a whole lot about Jesus. One time when he's 12, we hear about him going to the temple. But for 30 years, we don't hear a whole lot. And it's not like that shame and that disrespect just went away. The shame that people put on him and his family, the shame that people put on Mary, the rumors, the gossip, it's not like that just went away. still, even though Jesus has been doing miracles, he's a rabbi now. They don't believe he's the Messiah, but they at least understand that he's a rabbi. Even still, they don't have respect for him. Like, even still, they don't respect him. They don't respect Mary. They don't respect Joseph. They're like, this is just a carpenter's son. He's the construction worker's son. Like, what? This guy isn't special. He's not special. Why should we respect him? Why should we listen to him? He's not special. So they were not respecting who he was. They didn't understand who he was, and they didn't understand what his purpose was. Even the Jews that when they sent Jesus to the cross, they thought they were ending his ministry, but really they were fulfilling his purpose here on earth. And man, that's a word for somebody right there. That just hit me. There's some people that think they're going to end what you're doing. There's some people that think they're going to go against what you're doing, but it's actually going to push you towards your purpose. There are some people that think they're going to end your journey, just like the Jewish leaders thought they were going to end Jesus' ministry. They thought they were going to crush Christianity. They thought they were going to crush the disciples, but it actually fulfilled prophecies and propelled Christianity forward, and it grew faster than ever before. And so there's people that think they're going to kill your dream, but actually they're going to fuel your dream. They're going to push your dream forward. They're going to make your dream grow faster than ever before. But if you let them kill your dream, if you let their words stick in your head, if you let their chain stay on you, yes, God could use what they're doing and turn it around and use something great, turns it into something great. But if you allow those chains to stay on you, if you allow those words to stay on you, it could be that you stay in that place for your whole life. So they didn't understand who he was, what he was created to do. You have to think about someone like Steve Jobs. I think Steve Jobs' life is so interesting. I don't think he was the greatest man as far as his morals and his character, but his genius, his work ethic, the creativity he had, I just really respect it. Imagine someone going up to Steve Jobs at the height of his career when Apple's just booming, when the iPhone just came out or when the iPad was released. And imagine someone being like, well, yeah, but Steve Jobs, you can't dunk. Yeah, this guy, who's this guy? He can't even dunk. He's not even an athlete. He's not even in the NBA. We would think that was crazy, right? We would look at that and be like, well, he's not in the NBA, but he's one of the richest men in the world. He's developed with his teams this technology that's revolutionized the world. Like, who cares that he's not in the NBA? Who cares that he's not playing basketball? Or you could look at it like somebody going up to LeBron when he was in his prime and being like, yeah, you've got all these championships and you've got all this money, but yeah, you could have been a computer tech guy. Why didn't you start a computer company? And he's like, what do you mean? Like, why would he start a computer company? He's very, very successful as an NBA player, as an athlete. Like, he's very successful in other businesses now because he was an athlete. But how many times do we do that to ourselves, or do we allow other people to do that to us? Where there's something that we're not even interested in. It doesn't even have any effect on our life. And they'll start to plant these seeds of doubt of, well, you could have been like your brother. Well, your dad, he would have done it this way. Well, your mom, she would have done it this way. Well, I really hope that you would have gotten this degree. And we'll start to measure ourselves on something that we never wanted to do. We're not gifted to do. We don't have the desire to do it. But then we start feeling bad of like, wow, man, why can't I do that? Why didn't I do that? And it's a chain. It's another link in the chain of what that people are putting on us. I know this has happened to me so many times in ministry. It's happened so many times to me in my life, especially over the past 10 or 15 years, where I felt like I was doing really good. Like Jesus, he's doing really good. He's teaching a whole lot of people. He's saving a whole lot of people. He's healing a whole lot of people. I felt like I was doing really good. And then someone's like, well, have you heard what so-and-so did? Like, have you heard that they're doing real estate now and they're doing really successful in real estate? Isn't that so awesome? And maybe this is my own insecurities. I know a lot of it is my own insecurities, But then I'll start to be like, well, should I have done real estate? Should I have done real estate? Should I have done crypto? Should I have done the stock market? Like, should I be in finance? And it can start to make me feel like I'm not doing the right thing when really it's just apples and oranges. It's they don't understand who I am or who I was created to be. So the solution to this is when people have put a chain on you with their words and they don't understand who you are or who you've been created to be, what you're supposed to do with your life, how you're supposed to live your life. This is the solution. Believe who God says you are, not who people say you are. If you are trapped in a box that people have put on you because they don't understand who you are, you have to believe who God says you are, not who people say you are. Proverbs 29:5 says this, fearing people is a dangerous trap, but trusting the Lord means safety. Fearing people is a dangerous trap, but trusting the Lord means safety. So you can actually be in danger if you start to trust what people say about you more than what God says about you, you're in danger. But if you say, no, I'm going to believe what God says about me, there is safety in believing what God says about you. Even if it doesn't make sense to anyone else, even if you don't fully understand it, there is safety in believing what God says about you, in believing that He has called you to do that He has given you that word, that He has given you that dream, that He has spoken to you. Believing that is much more safe than fearing and believing what people say about you. So you have to believe what God says about you more than what people say about you. And I'll even put this on here is maybe you're like, well, I don't even necessarily know what God says about me. Well, what do you believe about yourself? And this may be tough for many people because I know me, a lot of times I don't believe the best about myself. I don't have the best self-talk all the time. I don't have the best headspace all the time. But you need to believe about yourself more than you believe other people. And yes, you need people in your life. You need accountability. You need mentors, all that good stuff. I understand all that. But a lot of the times, people that are speaking into our life, they do not understand our intentions. They don't understand our motives. They don't understand where we're going in life, what we're called to do in life. And so they'll start to give you even advice that they think is good. And if you put that above what you feel is best or what you feel God is saying is best, especially, it's always going to lead you to a place of fear. It's always going to lead you to a place of worry. It's always going to lead you to a place of doubt. And so I want you to break free. If they don't know who you are, if they don't know who you are or what you're called to do, you need to believe what God says more than what they say. You need to believe what God says more than what they say and what you say about yourself. If you say you're going to do something, if you say you're going to live a certain way, if you say you're going to accomplish a certain thing, don't let people plant seeds of doubt in your mind. Don't let them put you in a prison. Don't let them put chains on you. The chains of what other people think about you. That's what we're talking about today, the chains of what other people think about you. The second thing that happened in this passage with Jesus is they judged him based on his family and the place he was born. They judged Jesus on his family and the place he was born. They judged Jesus on his family and the place he was born. I'll read it to you again. It says they scoffed. This is how I kind of, he's just the carpenter's son. And we know Mary, his mother, and his brothers, James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas. All his sisters live right here among us. Where did he learn all these things? Like, who is this guy? So they start calling out not only Jesus, but they start calling out his family members. They start making fun of his mama. Come on, when you start making fun of somebody's mama, like, that's bad. Like, you are going low. But again, we see that in our lives where people are like, there's no way that you come on, we know who you are. We know who your parents are. I went to high school with your mom. Come on, I went to college with your dad. We know who you are. There's no way you could do that. There's no way you could break free from that. There's no way you could overcome that. No, your father was an alcoholic. Your grandfather was an alcoholic. We know who you are. Even when people get saved, they often hear this. Like, they'll get saved and have this radical transformation, and it's real. It's for real. They're changing their life. They're flushing things. They're deleting numbers. They're going away. They're not going to the places they used to go. But then you'll have somebody say, we heard you changed. You think you're better than us now? We heard you change. You didn't really change. I know you didn't really change. I know you'll be back with us in a couple weeks. I know you'll be back with us in a couple months. And a lot of times that ends up happening not because the person didn't actually change, not because they didn't actually give their life to Christ, but because that person put a chain on them, and the person let that chain stay around them, and they're like, well, maybe I'm not going to get set free, and maybe this is all just fake, and maybe I'll never be free. And that chain became a prison, and they went back to living the same life that they were living because they allowed someone to judge them based on where they come from, their family. And you can expand this. This could be about from a certain neighborhood. This could be a certain ethnic group. This could be a certain amount of income. It could be an education level. It could be a country. There's so many different things you could apply to this, but the principle is that people were judging Jesus because of his background, not because of what he was currently doing. Think about that for a moment. They weren't judging Jesus because of what he was currently doing, because they admitted that he was doing miracles, and they admitted that he had great wisdom. It says that they were astonished. They were amazed at him. So obviously he was doing some pretty good things if they were amazed. They were impressed with what he was currently doing, but because of his past, they tried to take away the weight and the importance and the power of what he was currently doing. And there are some of you that you are doing great things right now, but there are still people that are trying to take away your joy, take away your happiness, take away the excitement of what you're doing because of who you used to be, because of where you come from, because of what you used to do. And some of you, it is things that you used to do. It's mistakes that you did make. Some of you, it's something that you never even did. It's just you were born. You didn't even choose it, but you were born there. But they made fun of him because of his family. And we know later on in John chapter 5, the Pharisees, when Nicodemus is talking to the Pharisees, he's saying, maybe Jesus is the Messiah. Are we sure that he's not the Messiah? And they're like, are you one of them too? Are you a Galilean? Are you from Nazareth like Jesus? And it's basically making fun, like, basically, you're from the wrong side of town too? Oh, you're from the sticks too? You're a country bumpkin too? Like, making fun of them that they were less educated, or they were poor, or it was like a knock against Nicodemus. They're like making fun of Nicodemus. You came from where Jesus came from too. You must be a bum. You must be poor. You must be uneducated. So it kind of became this knock against Jesus of where he came from. It became a knock against him of where he was from. But especially, even if you don't believe this about yourself, come on, don't you think that there was a purpose in Jesus being born and raised where he was born and raised? I know he was born in Bethlehem, but he was raised in Nazareth. That was his hometown. Don't you think there was a reason? Don't you think that was a specific place at a specific time? There's an incredible book, or several books, where he talks about it, but N.T. Wright talks about the reason Jesus came at the time that he came, where even if you're not a Christian, you can study how the world was colliding and the Roman roads and all these different things. And Jesus came at just the right time to spark Christianity to where it could spread like wildfire. If he came any earlier, it wouldn't have been able to spread as quickly because there wasn't a diversity and there wasn't people speaking multiple languages. There wasn't a common currency. There wasn't the Roman roads, all these different things. But don't you think that God planned for Nazareth to be where he was born. Like, there was a purpose for it. There was a reason for it. Don't you think that he planned Joseph and Mary? It wasn't like they were the only people that were available. It wasn't like, well, let's just see who will take up this job. No, there was a reason behind it. And I want to let you know that even if you see things as bad, even if you see these experiences that you've gone through as wrong or as a knock against you, that there is a reason. And I'm not talking about things that have been done to you and abuses and different things. And you're like, why was I born into that family? Why was I raised into that culture? Why did I live in that country? There's a reason. God is working it all together. So if people are judging you, if people are saying things about you, if their opinion about you is because of where you're from or the way you talk or the family that you're a part of, here's what I want you to do. See your history as a blessing and not as a burden. See your history, see where you come from, see your family as a blessing and not a burden. Because God has designed your life. God knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb. So that means that he knew the mother that you were going to be born to. He knew the place that you were going to be born. He knew the way that you were going to grow up and be raised. And yes, there's sin and there's all those different things involved where people may have hurt you and different things. But there's a blessing. There's a reason. Maybe you have skills. Maybe you can reach people that no one else can reach. Maybe you can speak the language, so to say, that no one else can speak. See your background. See your history as a blessing and not a burden. God chose you and placed you exactly where you're supposed to be. We see this in the story of Esther that's talked about a lot. Esther chapter 4, verse 14 says, if you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place, but you and your relatives will die. So it's saying if you don't do it, somebody's going to do it. God's going to raise up someone. God's going to raise up someone to reach that people group. God's going to raise up someone to start that church. God's going to raise up someone to start that business. God's going to raise up someone to start that ministry. But if you're not a part of it, you may never fulfill all that you want to fulfill in life. You may be miserable for the rest of your life. God's going to make sure it happens. God's will is going to be done. But if you want to be a part of it, maybe there's a reason you are where you are right now. Because the next line says, who knows if perhaps you were made queen for such a time as this? Maybe you have been placed in the job you're in right now for such a time as this. Maybe you've been placed in the city you're in right now for such a time as this. Maybe you've been placed in the church you're in right now for such a time as this. And there's something that you need to do, and you don't need to worry about other people's opinions of where you come from. You don't need to worry about other people's opinions of what you look like and what you talk like. No, if God has called you to do it, you need to do it. If God has called you to do it, perhaps he's raised you up for such a time as this, for such a place as this. This is something that's been encouraging me, or I guess challenging me the past even couple months, couple of years, because we live in such a chaotic time. We live in such a crazy time. I never thought that I would see things get the way they are in America right now. And I know we have so many people that say that. I know that's a common thing, but that's scary that it's a common thing. I never thought we would see the violence, the anger, the perversion, the sexuality. I never thought that it would be like this in my lifetime. I knew it would be like this one day because the Bible talks about it, but I never knew it would be like this. And sometimes I find myself thinking, man, it would have been a lot easier to do this ministry thing like in the 80s. Or it would have been a lot easier to do this ministry thing in like the 40s or something like that. And I'm sure people that were alive in that time are like, oh yeah, you think it would be. But I talk to people that have been ministers for a long time, and many of them have even said to me, like, we are unequipped for this. We don't understand. This is so different. This has changed so much from when we were coming up, from when we were starting out. And I just have been encouraging myself in the Lord that if I'm alive right now, if I have a family right now, that it must be for such a time as this. I honestly don't want to really raise my sons in the world that we're living in right now. It's a scary time to raise children. But if God has given me children, if he's given me a marriage, if I have what I have right now, then there must be a reason, and it must be for such a time as this. And I can't let what people say about my past, I can't let what people say about who I am or where I come from stop me from doing the thing that God has placed me to do in this time, in this location, for such a time as this. You choose how you look at where you came from. You choose your perspective. You choose whether it's a blessing or whether it's a burden. You choose whether you're going to use it to fuel you or whether you're going to use it to stop you, whether you're going to use it as excuses. If you're going to use it for something that you can blame other people, and I'll blame my teachers and I'll blame my parents, I'll blame my coaches, I'll blame my coworkers, or are you going to choose, no, I have been put here for such a time as this, and I am choosing to let those things build me instead of break me. I'm going to choose to let my past, even if it was hard, even if it was messed up, even if it was twisted and toxic, I'm going to let it build me and make me into the person that I'm supposed to be, the person that God has created me to be, instead of it breaking me. Come on, I'm going to let my past, I'm going to choose to let my past build me, to make me into the person God has created me to be, the person that God has planted in the world for such a time as this. I'm not going to let my past break me. I'm not going to let my past overwhelm me. I'm not going to let my family or where I come from, and especially what people say about those things, break me. I'm going to let it build me. Somebody just needs to put in this chat, I'm going to let it build me. It's going to build me, not break me. You choose how you look at where you come from. I heard this kind of story the other day, this illustration where there were two sons, there were two brothers, and they were both raised in the same home, raised exactly the same way. We can even say they were twins. They had the same life growing up. And one ended up living on the street. So there were these two brothers that lived the exact same way. They were twins, raised in the exact same home, same standard of living, everything. But one ended up being homeless, and the other ended up being a successful business owner. And so a newspaper caught wind of this, and they were like, we got to figure out, if these two guys were raised in the same home, what was the difference? And so they go to the homeless man first, and they say, sir, we understand that, your brother is successful and all these different things. How did you end up in this place? Like, what was the difference? How did you end up here? And the homeless man said, I'm homeless because my father was an alcoholic. And then they go to the businessman and they say, you're so successful. Like, what changed? How did you become successful? And your twin brother, he's living on the street and he's homeless and all these different things, doesn't have a family. And the successful businessman said, I'm successful because my father was an alcoholic. Two men raised in the same home, raised with the same family, because of their perspective, because of what they chose to believe about their past, because they chose what people were going to put on them. One became successful, and one, his whole life, used excuses and was never able to get out of that cycle of poverty because of where he came from. You can allow your perspective to change so much, and don't allow what people say about your past to change your perspective. Come on, somebody's got to get that. Don't allow what people say about your past to change your perspective. If you see your past as a blessing, don't let someone else tell you it was a burden. This is one of the things I get so frustrated with sometimes, when people are like, well, you don't actually realize, but that situation was really bad for you. That was a really abusive situation. And someone has maybe realized that and overcome it. They've let go of it. They've gotten forgiveness from the person, but the person's like, well, I just don't see how you can let go of that. And we can let people trip us up and get us back in a cycle of depression and excuses and worry and anxiety because of what they put on us and not because what we actually believe about our past, not because of what we actually believe about what happened to us or the things that we've been through. So don't allow someone else's perspective, someone else's opinion change your perspective about where you come from. Don't let someone else's opinion change your opinion about yourself, change your opinion about your family. Like you see this all the time in relationships where someone will have a great relationship with their family, and then they'll get in a dating relationship or engaged or married to someone, and that person that they get with is like, well, your family's actually really rude and they're actually really mean. And the person that is like a part of the family is like, well, I've known them my whole life, and I didn't think they were rude. I didn't think they were mean. I didn't think they were angry. But they can start to change their mindset about someone because of the words, because of the opinion of this other person. So don't allow people's opinions to change your perspective on your past, on your family members, on where you come from, and make sure you see those things as a blessing and not a burden. Let it be something that builds you and not something that breaks you. And if you feel like you don't come from the best background, or you feel like you don't have the best education, or you don't feel like you have all these different things, I want you to look at this verse in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 27. But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. Come on, God chooses the people that no one else would choose. God chooses the people that don't make sense to the world. God chooses people that everyone else would look over because he wants them to know it's not because of them, it's because I'm working through them. So if you are weak, if you feel like you're foolish, if you feel like you don't have all the words, that's good. That means God can use you more. That means you can reflect God more. That when people look at you, they're like, I know it's not Alex. I know he is not that smart. I know that he does not have all that wisdom. That must be God working in him. There's no way he could accomplish that. That must be God. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with people. I would rather people look at me like that instead of me striving to be something that I'm not supposed to be, and all the weight being on me, all the worry being on me, all the anxiety being on me. If I just say, hey, I can't do this, and just give it up to God, then it's all on God. The responsibility is all on God. So know that God chooses foolish things, weak things to confound the world, to confuse the world. There's so many examples where people are like, how did this person do that thing? I just don't understand. They didn't go to the right college. They're not from the right town. They didn't have the right connections. They didn't have the right funding. They didn't have the right marketing strategy because of God. Because of God. And sometimes we don't want to do that because we want the credit. But if you really want God to have the credit, then you can be open and you can just say, hey, it's not me, it's God. Let's go on to the last one. The last one that we see in this passage with Jesus and his disciples, where they are not accepting Jesus. They are not accepting Jesus. So if you're going to get set free from other people's opinions, if you're going to get set free from what other people think about you, you have to realize that people are going to want you to be just like them. And if you're not just like them, they're going to get offended at you. People are going to want you to be just like them, and if you're not just like them, they're going to get mad and they're going to get offended. When Jesus came into town and began to teach better than they could teach, when he began to do miracles greater than they could do, they did not like it. We have this thing as humans where we don't like people to stand out very much. Have you ever noticed this before? We love an underdog story until the underdog becomes the overdog, I guess you could say, the big dog, and then we turn against them. You see this in athletes. You see this in celebrities. It's like Patrick Mahomes when he was coming up. Everybody's just like, man, this guy, he's young, and he's going to turn around Kansas City, and this is such a cool story. But then when Kansas City started winning a lot and they started becoming very successful, then everybody's out to get Kansas City. They're out to get Patrick Mahomes. They're like, well, we don't want him to win anymore. And I first heard of this in Australia, but I think it's becoming known all around the world now. There's this thing called the tall poppy syndrome, where a poppy is essentially a flower, and if a flower rises amongst the rest of the flowers, you chop it down. Because think about in your hedges or in your garden, most of the time you want those things to be very uniform. You want the hedges around your house to have, symmetry, and whether they're rounded or whether they're squared off. And so if one grows up a little bit higher than the rest, you cut that off. You cut everything to the same level, to the same height, even though obviously some of those branches had the ability to grow taller, to grow faster, maybe even to be stronger. You cut it down. And that's unfortunately what we do with so many people, and not just celebrities, but even people in our own lives, and people I'm sure have done it to you, where when you start to excel, you all of a sudden become the enemy. When you start to get better, when you start to have some light shine on you, all of a sudden people feel like they need to remind you of who you really are. All of a sudden people feel like they need to cut you down to size. They need to remind you, they need to humble you a little bit. Me and some friends were talking about this recently, especially with people who are called by God and young Christians who are excited about doing big things for God, and they want to grow and they want to expand, and they have all these visions and dreams and all this different stuff. It's amazing how many young people get humbled and get broken down, and basically they get torn down to where they don't really have a vision anymore. They don't really have hope for the future anymore. They're not excited about the future anymore. And they get trapped in a place that they were never supposed to be in because other Christians were like, well, you're getting a little excited. We need to make sure you don't get too prideful, or we need to make sure, when you grow up, you're going to understand how things really are, or you're going to know how things really difficult, or, well, we tried that when we were your age and it didn't work for us, so I doubt it's going to work for you. And people cut you down because you're standing out. They cut you down because you are sticking out. You're in front of the pack. You're ahead of the pack. You're growing taller than other people, and you're being the one that's being attacked. And it's easy when you're being attacked to even choose to shrink back a little bit. It's easy when you're catching all the heat, when you're catching all the flack. It's easy to be like, I don't want this anymore. I don't want to be the one that gets the hedge trimmers first. I don't want to be the one that's always getting everything first. I don't want to be the one that's sticking out. I'll just shrink back and I'll just be in the crowd. But that's not going to make you happy. You know that is just a chain. That's a prison that they're putting you in, of being like everyone else, of just looking like everyone else, sounding like everyone else, talking like everyone else. And this is the reason I believe this happens most of the time. Most of the time, and it actually says in here that Jesus offended them. Most of the time, I believe that when people are offended at you, when people are mad at you, when people try to cut you down and cut your dreams down, cut your vision down, it's not because of what you're doing, it's because it is revealing something in them, and that's what offends them. That's what upsets them. When you begin to cast vision, when you begin to get excited about your future, what's happening is they're remembering when they gave up on their vision, when they gave up on their dream, and so now they want to get you to give up on yours, because if you succeed and they fail, that's going to make them feel bad about themselves. So they want you to fail too. If you give up and they give up, then we're all the same. But if you succeed and they gave up, then they realize that there must be something that I did that I made the mistake. Again, these people are from the same town, the same place. They would have gone to the same schools, had the same resources. There are people that you grew up with, people that you know, and they're not really mad at you. It's not that they really don't like your business plan or that they think that it's a bad idea. It's not because of any of that. It's simply because if you're successful and they're not successful, then that proves it wasn't where you came from. It proves that it had nothing to do with your education, the school that you went to, because y'all both went to the same school. It proves that it was their choice that they are where they are, and that it was your choice that you become successful and you are where you are. So you just living your life and you being successful can offend people even when you're doing what God has called you to do. Even in the ministry, even in the church, you can offend other church people because they know they should be doing what you're doing. Oh, this one might ruffle some feathers right here. But you can offend other church people because they know they should be praying as much as you're praying. And so you'll hear things like, oh, you know, you don't have to pray that much. You know, it's not that big of a deal. You know, God knows your heart. God knows what you want to say to him. Or they know they should be fasting as much as you're fasting. And, well, you know, in the New Testament, you know, Jesus died for our sins. Do we really have to? Jesus suffered for us on the cross. Do we really have to suffer? Do we really have to fast? I'm not so sure if that's for us today. Don't worry about that. You don't have to do that. You go to church every Sunday, like it doesn't. Jesus knows, you know, he knows that you love him. He knows Jesus already died on the cross for you. You don't have to do all that. And they want you to shrink down to where they are on their spiritual level because what you are doing is challenging them. And if you keep doing what you're doing, they're going to keep feeling that challenge. They're going to keep feeling that conviction. And so what they want to do is they want to knock you down to their level. They want to knock you down to their level of spirituality. They want to knock you down to their level of stewardship, of finances, of fasting and prayer and attending church and Bible reading. Like you don't gotta read through the whole Bible. Like that's a lot of time. You know, that's a lot of time you could be spending doing other things. I don't think God wants you to waste all that time. It's because what you're doing is offending them. It's convicting them. It's making them realize I should be doing better, but I don't really want to do better. And so I would rather them do less. That way I can keep doing less and then we're all good. Because if someone else is doing more, it's going to challenge me to do more and I don't want to do more. So why don't I just make them do less? So they wanted him to be like them. They wanted Jesus to be just another guy from Nazareth. They didn't want him preaching these messages. They didn't want him acting like he was the Messiah. And I'm not saying that you're the Messiah. I'm not saying our mission in life is as important as Jesus is, or that our calling is as important as Jesus is. But I know that God has called you to do great things. Jesus told us before he ascended into heaven that greater works will you do. Greater works will the disciples do. So don't let people cut you down. A couple more scriptures, or one more scripture. Galatians chapter 1 verse 10 says, obviously, I'm not trying to win the approval of people, but of God. If pleasing people were my goal, I would not be Christ's servant. If pleasing people were my goal, I would not be Christ's servant. So if you're a Christian, if you're a believer, pleasing people is not your goal. Pleasing people, making people happy, making people comfortable is not your goal. Your goal is to please God. Your goal is to serve God. Yes, you need to love people like Christ loved people, but Jesus also told people to change. Jesus also told people they needed to repent, and he was loving them. He loved them in doing that. And so my goal, my mission is not to please people, not to be the same as everyone else, not to make everyone like me. It's to please God. It's to serve God. And so if I'm different from everyone else, if I stand out and other people want to tear me down, other people want to cut me down, I need to realize that it doesn't matter what they say because I'm not living for them. I'm not living for their opinion. So when other people want you to be just like them, realize that God has not created you to be like them. He's created you to be like him. God has not created you to be like them. He's created you to be like him. He doesn't want you to be like everyone else. He doesn't want you to model your life to make everyone else happy, to make everyone else comfortable. He wants you to model your life so that you are making him happy. He wants you to model your life so that you can be comfortable in heaven one day. That's how he wants you to model your life. So don't let people cut you down. Don't let people shape you. Don't let people mold you. Because think about it. That's what they're doing. They're trying to shape you and mold you into their image. Oh, come on. We're supposed to be molded into the image and created. We're supposed to look like God. We're supposed to be reflecting God, not reflecting other people, not reflecting celebrities, not reflecting people that are popular, not reflecting people that we think are successful, or people that we think, well, if we look like them and if we act like them, they'll approve of us. No, we're supposed to be a reflection of God, not a reflection of other people. So don't be shaped by other people. Let God shape you, and don't care what anybody else says. I want to leave you with a few quotes that I found that I just thought were really good pertaining to this topic. We're going to wrap up. I know today went a little bit longer. Here's the first quote. The greatest prison people live in is the fear of what other people think. The greatest prison people live in is the fear of what other people think. Fear of what other people think can keep you trapped, no matter how rich you are, no matter how successful you are, no matter how many people you have that love you. If you allow just a few people to put you in a prison of fear, it can keep you trapped forever. So don't get trapped in the prison of fear. Don't get trapped in the prison of other people's opinions. One of the greatest mental freedoms is truly not caring what anyone thinks of you. Truly not caring what anyone thinks of you. Outside of God, outside of your spouse, outside of your children, shouldn't really matter what people think of you. I love this one. What God knows about me, this is a word for someone. What God knows about me is more important than what other people think about me. Ooh. What God knows about me is more important than what other people think about me. So they could think that you are crazy. They could think that you're lazy. They could think you're a jerk. They can think whatever they want to think about you. But what God knows about you is more important than what other people think about you. Christine Caine said this, until we care more about what other people, Christine Caine said this, until we care about what God thinks more. I keep messing this up. Let me get a drink of water. Christine Caine said this, until we care more about what God thinks than what other people think, we are never truly free. Until we care more about what God thinks than what other people think, we are never truly free. Is your opinion of other people higher than what God says about you? Are people's opinions higher than God's opinion? Do you care more about what people think than what God thinks about you? And then here's one more. All of these are just different variations. You are not what others think you are. You are what God knows you are. You are not what others think you are. You are what God knows you are. I'll put it this way. You are not who others think you are. You are who God says you are. And I say it all the time, so many scriptures throughout the Bible. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are the head and not the tail. Come on, you are more than a conqueror. You are loved by God. There are so many things. It's what God says about you, not what people say about you. So, hey, thank you so much for joining. Pastor Audrey, I see you on here. So good, because I truly do not care what other people think about me, for real. Hey, that's great. I love that. Thank you so much for joining. God knows my name. Yes, he knows my name. And it doesn't matter who else knows my name, as long as God knows my name. As long as it's in the Lamb's Book of Life, that's all that matters. So, hey, thank you so much for watching. Those of you that watch live, thank you for watching the replay. If you're on the replay, let me say a prayer for you real quick. Dear Lord, I pray that every person that's watching this, every person, even if they're watching on a replay, even years from now, that you would break them free from the chains of what other people think about them, that you would break them free from the opinions of other people, that they would not care about what people say about them. They would care about what you say about them. And that now they would be free from every opinion, from every word that's been spoken over them. Lord, they would only care about who you say they are, about what you have called them to do, and not what anyone else says. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Well, hey, thank you so much. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like this video. Share it with a few friends. If you want more information on our ministry, you can go to carryrevival.com. You can find out information about our 40 days of fasting that we're doing, prayer and fasting, called 40 Days of Fire. You can find that on our website. You can also find ways to partner, ways to get involved, join our email list so that you can get news and updates from us. All those great things at carryrevival.com. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this blessed you. Hope it encourages you. Hope it helps you. I'll see you next time. God bless.